The Simpsons predicted 9/11 before the world ever saw it. They put Donald Trump in the White House years before it became reality.
As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump.
They even showed Disney owning Fox long before the deal was announced.
From 19 years ago, Predict the Future, it shows the entrance to 20th Century Fox movie studios.
People dismissed those moments as coincidences until they kept coming true. Now, another prediction from an old soccer episode appears to match the 2026 World Cup.
This match will determine once and for all which nation is the greatest on Earth, Mexico or Portugal.
If history repeats itself, the ending may already be written. But before we get there, you need to see the pattern, because once it reveals itself, you start looking at these predictions very differently. Number 10. The smartwatch. In 1995, The Simpsons gave Lisa a look at her future. Her future husband Hugh was there, and he did one small thing that nobody thought twice about. He raised his wrist and used his watch to make a phone call. Not a phone, his watch. In 1995, that sounded like science fiction. A watch that makes calls, sends messages, tracks your health, and tells you where to go? Most people were still figuring out how to use a pager. The internet was barely in homes. A screen on your wrist connected to the world was a spy movie prop, not something a real person would wear to work. Samsung tried it in 2013 with the Galaxy Gear. Apple made it mainstream in 2015 with the Apple Watch. Now, hundreds of millions of people wear one without thinking about where the idea came from. A cartoon wrist in 1995 got there first. And if The Simpsons called something as specific as a smartwatch 3 decades early, just wait until you see what it did with a sitting president. Number 9. Donald Trump in the Oval Office. Bart to the Future aired in March 2000. Lisa Simpson is President of the United States, and she is explaining the financial disaster she inherited. She turns to her staff and says, "America is dealing with a budget crisis left behind by President Trump." One line, delivered like a joke. Aired when Donald Trump was a businessman who appeared in tabloids and owned buildings with his name on them. In 1999, Trump had briefly floated the idea of running with the Reform Party. He walked away from it, and most people forgot it happened. The writers saw something, though, a country where fame was starting to work like power, where a name on a building could become a name on a ballot. They pushed it to the most absurd place they could imagine and put it on screen. 16 years later, Trump entered the 2016 presidential race. Early on, many people treated it exactly the way they had treated the 1999 flirtation. Then he kept winning. Primaries fell. Experienced politicians with decades of preparation could not stop him. In November 2016, he defeated Hillary Clinton and became the 45th President of the United States. The Simpsons had typed his name next to the word President before the century had even started. And from the White House, the show moved to a business deal that reshaped the entire entertainment industry. Number 8. Disney takes over Fox. In 1998, a single shot inside an episode called When You Dish Upon a Star showed the Fox studio lot. On the building sign, plain as anything, 20th Century Fox was listed as a division of Walt Disney Company. No character pointed at it. No one in the episode mentioned it. It was a background detail dressed up as a joke. At the time, the joke landed because it sounded impossible. Fox and Disney lived in completely different worlds. Disney was the polished family empire, theme parks, princesses, carefully managed at every level. Fox was the network that put The Simpsons on the air, a cartoon that spent every episode making fun of exactly the kind of institution Disney was. The idea of Fox ending up under the Disney roof felt like the most absurd punchline the writers could find. In 2019, it became a press release. Disney completed the acquisition of major 21st Century Fox assets for $71.3 billion. The film studio, FX, National Geographic, television production units, and a larger stake in Hulu all changed hands. The cartoon that built its entire identity on mocking corporate giants was now owned by one. A background gag from 1998 had described a transaction that took another 2 decades to happen. And from billion-dollar media deals, the next prediction got personal for a lot of people. Number 7. Machines taking human jobs. In an episode called Them Robot, Mr. Burns fires nearly the entire workforce at the nuclear power plant and replaces them with robots. The machines do not sleep, they do not eat, they do not file complaints or ask for raises or call in sick on a Monday. Burns is delighted. Homer is kept on as the one remaining human employee, not because he is valued, but because someone has to be there when something goes wrong. For years, it read as a cartoon about corporate greed. Then the real version arrived, not with robots that looked like the ones in the episode, with software that quietly took over tasks one at a time. A chat system handling the calls that used to go to a person. A writing tool producing content that a team used to create. A design program delivering in seconds what once took hours. The replacement came without anyone announcing it. Here is where it stops being a cartoon joke. Researchers put about 40% of all global jobs in the category of AI exposed. In richer countries, it is closer to 60%. IBM paused hiring for around 7,800 positions that artificial intelligence could fill. Amazon cut approximately 14,000 corporate roles, while accelerating its investment in AI systems. The danger is not a single dramatic moment where machines storm through office doors. It is a contractor not renewed, a junior position that quietly disappears. One team told to do the same work with fewer people. That is already the reality for a lot of workers. Now that you have seen what this show does with technology and politics, it is time to get into the real reason you clicked on this video. Number 6. The White Tiger Attack. Before we get into the football predictions, this one sits between the general stuff and the sport-specific moments, and it matters because it shows exactly how precise The Simpsons can be. In 1993, Springfield got a casino. The writers built a Las Vegas-style stage act around 2 performers named Gunter and Ernst, clearly modeled on Siegfried and Roy. They had the outfits, the lights, and a white tiger on stage with them. Then the tiger attacked them. Live performance. Animal turns on its handlers. The crowd watches something go very wrong. Siegfried and Roy were the most famous big cat act in the world. They had performed at the Mirage in Las Vegas for years. White tigers were their signature. The Simpsons used that image for a comedy bit inside a casino episode, and everyone understood the reference. It was satire, not prophecy. Or so it seemed. In October 2003, Roy Horn was mid-performance at the Mirage when a white tiger called Manticore grabbed him by the neck and dragged him off stage. Roy survived but was gravely injured. He never fully recovered. The show never returned. 10 years before it happened, The Simpsons had staged the exact same sequence for a laugh. That is the level of accuracy we are dealing with. Now, let's talk about football, because everything that follows is where this gets genuinely hard to explain. The Simpsons and the World Cup, 1 episode, 4 predictions. Homer Simpson ends up refereeing at the World Cup in Brazil, and inside that single episode, The Simpsons called a corruption scandal, a semifinal scoreline, a superstar's injury, and a boot deal that did not exist yet. Here is how each one played out. Number 5. The FIFA corruption scandal. The episode is called You Don't Have to Live Like a Referee. Homer gets the job of officiating at the World Cup in Brazil after Lisa tells a reporter that her father is the most honest man she knows. Homer Simpson, the man who once sold his soul for a donut, is now on the pitch at the biggest tournament on Earth. What matters is not Homer. What matters is what the episode puts around him. A senior official from the fictional World Football Body appears and speaks openly about how rotten the organization actually is. He does not hint at it carefully. He describes it plainly, like someone listing the weather. Then he is arrested on screen. At the time, the audience laughed because It felt like obvious satire. Everyone suspected football's governing body had problems. Nobody had the receipts yet. 1 year later, the receipts arrived. In May 2015, Swiss police walked into a luxury Zurich hotel in the early morning and arrested senior FIFA officials before they had left for the day's Congress. U.S. prosecutors announced charges against 14 people, 9 football officials, and 5 sports marketing executives. Racketeering, wire fraud, money laundering. Investigators said more than $150 million in bribes and kickbacks had been paid or agreed to, tied to the television and marketing rights around international tournaments. Sepp Blatter won a new presidential term days after the arrests, and then resigned almost immediately after. A cartoon arrest inside a World Cup episode became a real arrest inside a 5-star hotel. And that same episode did not stop there. It moved straight onto the pitch. Number 4. Germany destroys Brazil. Inside that same episode, Brazil and Germany meet in the World Cup. Germany wins. The cartoon does not make a big deal of it. The result is a background detail, and the episode moves on. 2-0 to Germany. Nobody clipped it at the time. It was just a scoreline in a comedy about a cartoon referee. Then, the 2014 World Cup reached its semi-final. Brazil against Germany, played in Brazil, with the entire country watching. Brazil had not hosted the tournament since 1950, and that older event had left a wound in the sport there that never properly healed. Losing the deciding match at home to Uruguay in 1950 had shaped Brazilian football's identity for decades. So, 2014 was not just a tournament. It was a chance to close something. Germany scored, then scored again. Thomas Müller, Miroslav Klose, who in getting that goal became the all-time top scorer in World Cup history. Toni Kroos, twice inside 2 minutes. Sami Khedira, 5 goals before the half-hour mark. The crowd in the Mineirão Stadium went silent in a way that did not sound like a football crowd anymore. It sounded like something else entirely. Andre Schürrle added 2 more after the break. Brazil scored through Oscar late on, and it changed nothing about the feeling in that stadium. The final score was 7-1. The Simpsons had Germany beating Brazil. The real thing made the cartoon version look generous. And in that same episode, the show had already built a character around the player Brazil was about to lose. Number 3. El Divo and the Neymar injury. Also inside that referee episode, Brazil has a superstar. His name is El Divo. He is talented, famous, dramatic, and treated like the player the whole country depends on. He is also the kind of footballer who divides opinion, brilliant enough to win a game by himself. Also the kind of player critics accuse of going down too easily, of making the most of contact, of performing when he does not need to. Homer has to officiate a match involving El Divo and at one point has to decide whether the Brazilian star is genuinely hurt or putting on a show. That description fit Neymar closely enough that the comparison was made immediately when people went back to the episode. He was Brazil's biggest name in 2014. 4 goals in the tournament before the quarterfinal. The face of the entire campaign. He was also one of the most debated players in the sport when it came to how he handled contact. The character and the real player shared the same public reputation, almost exactly. In the quarterfinal against Colombia, Juan Camilo Zúñiga drove his knee into Neymar's back. Neymar went to the ground and did not get back up. He had fractured a vertebra. His tournament was over. Brazil won 2-1, but the dressing room after it felt nothing like a victory. Then people went back to the episode and noticed something else. El Divo's boots had a look that reminded people of Puma. In 2014, Neymar was a Nike athlete with a long-standing deal. Nobody connected it to anything. Then, in 2020, Neymar signed with Puma. One episode had called the injury, the team's collapse, and a sponsorship deal that did not exist for another 6 years. And now, the biggest question is whether the same show already decided the 2026 World Cup final before the tournament even started. Number 2. The prediction nobody took seriously. In 1997, in an episode called The Cartridge Family, the family is watching television, and an advert appears for a football match. The announcer describes it like the most important game on the planet. Then the teams come on screen. Mexico against Portugal. In 1997, that pairing made no particular sense. Mexico and Portugal were not names anyone would write at the top of a predicted final. The episode moved on. Nobody flagged it. It sat in the archive for years until football fans started pulling old Simpsons clips apart, looking for patterns. The theory came back properly during the 2022 World Cup. Mexico was there. Portugal was there. Ronaldo was still chasing a World Cup medal. The clip started circulating, and people started watching it more carefully. Then Mexico did not escape the group stage. Portugal went out before the final. The moment died, but the episode had never named a year, so the idea stayed open, waiting for the right tournament. That tournament is happening right now. And this time, the setup is different in ways that make the 1997 clip feel less like an old joke and more like something that deserves a second look. Number 1. Mexico versus Portugal, the 2026 final. Mexico is not just a team in this World Cup. Mexico is one of the hosts, playing at home, in front of their own fans. At stadiums they know, and visiting teams do not. The Estadio Azteca in Mexico City sits above 7,300 feet. Guadalajara is above 5,000 feet. Any team not specifically prepared for that altitude feels it in the final 20 minutes when legs go heavy and passes start falling short. Small margins in a World Cup knockout match are not small at all. Mexico has also been carrying a specific weight for a long time. Between 1994 and 2018, the team reached the round of 16 in every single World Cup and fell there every time. The same wall, 8 tournaments in a row. Then 2022 came, and Mexico did not even get out of the group. A run to the final in 2026, at home, ending that pattern in front of their own people, would be one of the most compelling football stories the tournament has produced in years. Mexico opened with a 2-0 win over South Africa, and followed that with a 1-0 win over South Korea. The old clip gets shared a little more after every result. Now, let's talk about Portugal, because this is where the story gets emotional. Cristiano Ronaldo is 41 years old. This is his 6th World Cup. He has the Champions League, multiple domestic league titles, the European Championship with Portugal, and the all-time record for international goals scored by any male player. The World Cup has not come. Everything else in the cabinet, and the one that matters most to his legacy, is still missing. Portugal reaching the final would not just be a football result. It would be the closing chapter of one of the most watched careers in the history of the sport. Portugal has the squad to make it real. Bruno Fernandes creates and scores from midfield. Bernardo Silva controls the tempo and finds the right pass when matches get tight. Rafael Leão brings pace and danger from the wing. Vitinha gives the middle of the pitch energy and structure. They are in Group K with DR Congo, Uzbekistan, and Colombia. They are expected to top the group, and they have the quality to do it. The 2026 World Cup final is set for July 19th at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. That is the night the whole tournament is pointing at. If Mexico win their side of the bracket and Portugal win theirs, a scene from a 1997 cartoon episode becomes the most shared clip in football. The teams the show picked, the venue in North America, all of it lining up almost 30 years after a writer put it in the background of a gun episode. But here is the part that nobody really wants to think about. The Simpsons did not give that Mexico-Portugal game a clean ending. There was no final whistle with a captain lifting the trophy, no celebration, no peaceful moment where the better team won and everyone accepted it. In the episode, the match fell apart. The crowd turned. The stadium lost control. Chaos spread through Springfield before anyone could own the result. The show predicted the matchup. It did not predict a happy ending. With the 2026 World Cup already underway, and both teams still in it. That last detail is the one that stays with you. Thanks for watching. Now check out the videos on screen for more stories like this one.